Sawyer Luxon, and this is Magic Lesson number 75, Polarized Interplay. I hope everyone had a wonderful spring equinox. I know I did. All of my orders rituals were absolutely wonderful. And of course, I'm sure you all have your own, some version of spring cleaning or honoring the newly deceased, all of these things that we do as we enter into spring. So happy, blessed spring equinox to everyone. And I need to let everyone know that the questions have gotten to the point where they are overwhelming. There are so many that if you ask me a question, it's probably going to take 6 weeks or more until I get around to answering yours, either personally by email or perhaps addressing it in a video. So give me a chance. I do everything I can to knock out as many of them as I can in a day, but it's going to take some time. So don't think I've forgotten you. And if you end up waiting for more than a couple of months, feel free to re-ask it again if you still are looking or inquiring into that information that I might not have gotten to the first time around. So today's question is, if I wanted to study the power of polarity in someone else, who would you suggest I make a study of? First of all, I wouldn't make a study of anyone but yourself, but of course we can all learn from everything all around us all the time. I know what you mean to say here, although perhaps a little less aggressively, so I will answer that. It goes on to say, I struggle in my own life to catch polarization in myself until it's too late, and so I haven't found a way to practice depolarizing in my own life. That is a very honest and yet very critical self-examination. I am hoping, able to see it clearly in others. I think this is a typo. I'm hoping being able to see it clearly in others may help me see it better in myself. To begin, you are already walking the path, fellow co-creator, and perhaps not giving yourself nearly enough credit here. Just coming to the gate of greater knowledge and then unhasping that latch and strolling forwards to comprehend that polarity exists and has an influence on everything. That's more than many people ever manage. So feel free to love yourself a bit. You're already getting there even when you think you aren't. We all are. And recognizing that you haven't yet acquired maybe the level of control over yourself, your best choices within situations, that you're actively seeking that level of control, that's a hurdle jumped already, even if you feel like you haven't already gotten to it. All knowledge begins in confusion. Every journey with the choice to take that first step. So you're doing well. You're doing much better at this magic stuff than you might think. And you seem to be approaching it in a very open-minded, if somewhat self-critical way. Lessons present themselves until they are no longer necessary. So there's never a worry about that. And learning is part of this. There's, in the occult, in any form of what you would call higher wisdom, esotericism training, there's no getting to the end goal, the diploma. There is no end goal in, deep hermetic or Kabbalic magics. There's an infinite, beautiful spiral. It tends to fall back onto itself path. But there's infinite path for all of us to walk, and enjoying the walk, knowing we're walking. What did they say in like the Vedic, like yoga traditions? Yoga is not about getting somewhere. It's about being where you're at, right? It's about being where you are. I think that's Brian Kest. It's same idea here. So it's okay to let yourself off the hook a bit. As for seeing polarity or studying it, it's everywhere. You can't miss it. Your inability to see it, if you do have an inability to see it, is simply because it's so profound in everything and everyone and absolutely everywhere that you have become conditioned and blind to it. And that's not bad. The conditioning may be to some extent as far as who you may want to evolve to be for your own reasons. But the polarity being everywhere, that isn't bad. It's not like you're trying to get rid of some malign gatekeeper in your psyche that's causing you harm. People speak the same way about the ego a lot of the time, and I don't want anyone getting confused. Polarity just is. It's a principle. It's a universal principle in Hermetics. Read of the three initiates, right? Of the emerald tablets of Thoth. Polarity is that force that's in a magnet where there are two polarized ends and one pulls and one repels. That's neither good or bad. It simply is. That's a slightly less than physics quality or great explanation of what polarity is. All things have poles, have two differing aspects of opposing orientations, a negative and a positive, and again, neither good or bad. It's like a neutron or proton. A female aspect and a male aspect. Again, not feminine or masculine, a zero and a one, an on and an off, a dark and a light, a kind and a cruel. Kabbalah in the Freemasonic and the Kabbalic forms, a severity and a mercy pillar, a qualitative, intelligent, inspired moment somewhere in our day, and then also a blissfully unintelligent, mind blank moment that passes like a soft breeze without us even knowing it was there. Well, those fugue states. We have exertion and rest. Polarity is there in everything, in every situation, every emotion, every material. It can't be removed from the equation. The practice of the magician is in cultivating balance between the poles. The poles are going to be there no matter what. And with practice, to remain then in that state of equilibrium, if you would, where all options and choices remain open to the master of this skill, rather than heightened states of polarized energies making our choices for us. The polarity, the polarized forces, the polarized opposing forces in everything all around us and also within us are still going to be there. We're setting up a place for ourselves, which is also going to be beneficial to everyone else, not just ourselves, right? But we're setting up a place, a nice cedar lounge chair. Maybe you're against that. Maybe you don't want to cut wood. Maybe you have just a beautiful natural cotton, shaman's blanket to sit on. Or maybe a council desk. Maybe you're sitting behind a surface of power, if you prefer. But you're sitting between these two pillars from where you can then see and interpret the information that's coming to you from all sides, from both sides, in a state of equilibrium in its center, whether it's actualized information or emotional information or psychological information, and whether it's from someone else or from yourself or from a situation at hand. What you're doing is becoming that crucial pivot point. Again, the middle of that teeter-totter. You can think of it as you're not getting rid of the polarity. It's you're becoming the ever graceful chief or chairperson, the director who relaxes in the glow of the sun by the pool's clear waters. Maybe you have your shades, your sunglasses on, leaned back. smells a little bit like sunscreen perhaps, or pineapple, the occasional sound of a hummingbird whirring off in the background somewhere. And as you're doing that, this is all happening, this relaxed state, as all of the resort personnel, all of the helpers, all of the employees are bringing memos and notes and messages to you from all sides. You're not moving. Right? You're relaxed. You're sunbathing. You're almost, so relaxed you're asleep, but not quite. You're fully aware. And they are just carrying silently, swiftly, carrying this information to you on lovely silver trays. So you can then decide with full knowledge from every angle of the greater resort when or when not to act on something, when or when not to change your mind, when or when not to fire or hire, when to expand your business, when to streamline. Anything, absolutely anything. It's about having a full 360-degree perspective, that 36-degree, or larger, to draw from. And having that data, that constant, unbiased perspective, that information flow directly to you with almost no work on your part, as quickly and easily and fully as possible, so that you're not wasting energy gathering it. So with the least or no effort from you at all, the information's just flowing in while you're kicking back by the pool. And so that your efforts then are fully on the perception itself, are on your choices within that perception, are on your direction maybe, or maybe just on relaxing while remaining fully aware of everything that's going on around you. But you can do that because you can see all sides and angles and then choose. And that is the best place to be in. You're going to be deciding where to go from the absolute center. Or again, from that, middle of the scales, the center, where to weigh the scales to better suit your own needs. If you're in the middle of the teeter-totter, it's easy to decide where to push more pressure, right? Too low on the right, then you're going to scoot over a little to the left. And you want to predictively have the left side go up, then go stand on the right and look, the left just jumps straight up. So see, it's this very simple, but perhaps a bit overwhelming when you realize, or at the beginning stages, the beginning processes of realizing how it's so throughout everything. The polarization isn't going anywhere. But if you're in the middle of it, choosing how to ride the teeter-totter becomes very, very easy. Choosing how to swing on that pendulum, it's going to allow you the best ability to serve yourself and therefore everyone else. Even more so when you begin to realize that everyone else is blindfolded, doesn't even understand that they're on this teeter-totter park ride and is being flung around up and down, injured, barely able to hold on for dear life. While you sit, or stand calmly at the center, not being affected at all, unless you choose to be. If you want to make a study of extreme, heightened, polarized energies manipulating people, you can look around at pretty much anyone who isn't an adept, an occultist in some sense, in modern North America. Not all, and remember, there are many different forms of occultism, so don't think they just have to be from your tradition. But I'm just saying, if they're not from a more enlightened tradition, not all, but most citizens of North America, because the culture and the society here that I happen to currently be in, historically, I mean, it is a nuclear radiative everglow example. It's a shining, toxic beacon on the hill of heightened polarity extremes, controlling the masses in mindset and physicality. Almost every interaction I have in my day that isn't with an initiate of some sort is just garishly splashed with polarity's paintbrush. You can't get away from it in North America. The whole society is inundated with polarization. Something as simple as grocery shopping can be very draining for the magi who forgets their training momentarily and allows the reactive states of others to become the dominating power in their own energetic sphere. I'm trying to think of a more scientific way of putting this. A rotating body or system can be in equilibrium if its rate of rotation is constant and remains unchanged by the forces acting on it. Torque, right? See, that's physics, and it applies. The natural world and its sciences that we alchemists spawned always pass the test, the Hermetic principle test. All things move. Aim for equilibrium. Or, in this physics definition, be generating the torque rather than on the plane that will absolutely be shifted by it. Polarity is when, I think what you're looking for is when confrontation presents and you fail to meet it the way you want, vibrationally, the way you were hoping to. So confrontation presents itself, or some action of another presents itself. Maybe they've said something and you react. You fall to meet them vibrationally. And now you've set the stage for polarity to influence you, to become as polarized as they are, perhaps on the opposing end of the spectrum. And that's going to influence you rather than you choosing and riding its influence. If you think you can't spot polarity, think of the biggest conspiracy theorist in your life. Perhaps someone you've seen on television. Maybe you came across some of these conspiracy theorists on YouTube. And it's neither right or wrong. There's nothing right or wrong with anyone. So I'm not saying I'm for or against different conspiracies, but the person that's always talking and loudly about some perceived, supposed, yet completely masked enemy or advocate. Fear states are a wonderful way to polarize an audience. Also, emotional energy, a wonderful way to polarize and create a reaction. So that's a person being ridden and used hard by polarity, always exhausting themselves energetically, always out of balance, in states of heightened emotion, getting carried away with our own emotions. We have all done it, and it isn't always obvious. Some destructive emotions can seem very calm, like normalized depression, once it's become acceptable to yourself or those around you. Apathy. Very low states are still out of balance states. You have to remember that. So it can be the raging hysteric screaming on television about this or that conspiracy takeover, or it can be the very quiet, very subdued, Eeyore polarized individual. Oh, something or someone else is always in control. We'll never escape the cage. Either type, it's still a polarization. Conspiracy theorists always are. You know what a conspiracy theorist is? Who isn't polarized? Who isn't out of balance? Do you know what they're called? A theorist. Just someone proposing a possibility in a state of calm or rationality without a need to emotionally charge concepts of right or wrong, enemy or friend, secrecy or public. See, conspiracy predefines that concept of that feeling of cloak and daggerness, behind the curtain, someone's out to get ya mindset. Magicians, we don't have that mindset. Or at our best, we're choosing not to be in that mental scape. If someone sets themselves against us, then they've done so. There's nothing conspiratorial about that. And if they haven't, and we don't know whether or not they have, we're not going to become emotionally reactive to that situation. We're going to seek the information we need to find out what is happening so we can best respond to it. Rationality doesn't allow for much conspiracy, and neither does enlightenment or illumination, or evolution or ascension. It only allows for possibilities, because that's what conspiracies are until they do or do not manifest, until they do or do not prove themselves out. Possible things that are or are not until we know which. So if you see someone talking about conspiracy, you're looking at bias. And when you're looking at bias, or when you're looking at an emotionally charged reaction to something that's being perceived by someone, you're looking at polarization. They are polarized. They have become polarized and they are responding to it. Anyway, so there's an example of polarity. If you want to make a study of it as it controls others, look to the conspiracy theorist in your life. That is a person who is well under the power of polarization to where it's run roughshod over them. Their personality, their ability to make useful choices for themselves and others depends how far they've gone. Usually it's someone predisposed also to channeling Pluto pretty hardcore. That's something I tend to see. And their planetary aspects, always trying to convince others of how right they are, which feeds back into the polarization that's already taking over and dominating them. Always trying to seek, claim, and maintain control, even to where they're making up imaginary things to control, even over illusory situations. They want control. Pluto adores some control, so that tends to be there as well. Another example, if you wanted to make a study of polarity, think of anyone confrontational. Maybe it's you, maybe it's someone else in your life. Think of the cop who behaves, the police officer who behaves wrongly. And I'm not saying they all behave wrongly. See, that's exactly where people go. And that's what I mean by it can be draining if you're having to respond to non-adepts in a conversation, even in your daily life. But let's say one individual police officer behaves wrongly. So people become very emotional, right? They become heightened states of emotion, and they emotionally react wrongly as well. Maybe someone throws something, maybe it's arson, or maybe it's a lot of people reacting emotionally with violent riots. So then the polarity crippled police officer who is one individual, now that's going to spawn, let's say it's multiplied. Now the police are going to start arming themselves to the teeth because they're crippled by their own polarity and are reacting to now the over heightened states of emotion in the rioters, so that the police are now rolling down the street in SWAT tanks against citizens. And so then the citizenship is going to then react even more polarized, right? Or of whatever pretend plays, what poor pretend plays we're talking about here, right? I feel bad for them even as I'm making them up. But that they're going to react to that action by then storming some building or something, or perhaps killing police or government officials, and on it goes. And then the police kill the bad guys, and then the bad guys are the good guys, and they kill the bad guys, and action, reaction. Someone does something icky. or stupid or cruel or ignorant. Someone is on the part of their path where they have not yet evolved beyond those lessons being necessary, to where the universe is still teaching them those lessons. If you act with ignorance, ignorance will be visited upon you. So someone did that, and then someone else vibrationally drops to meet them. Rather than holding a central state, rather than being harmonized, rather than being non-reactive, they vibrationally drop to meet them in a state of heightened emotion, and maybe they become angry or hateful. And then round we go, right? And no one gets what they really want in that scenario, at least not what they're claiming they want. They do get what they're actually telling the universe they want and need. They're getting those lessons. They're getting more pain so that others grieve with them in theirs, or more anger that makes theirs seem existently necessary, more hate to match their own, normalizing their experience to responses. I'm hurting, so now I want to hurt you too. That's the nonsense most people get conditioned with their whole lives. Action, reaction. They claim they want peace, but they don't actually want peace. If you want peace, you be peaceful. You promote it by being peaceful. And there's great power in that. They want justice, but not by being just themselves. They want it doled out on someone else, and so are actually just continually doling out universal justice on themselves, despite themselves. The universe doesn't care if you're too preoccupied with your emotions or too unperceptive to know that it's teaching you the lessons you're actually asking for. It's going to teach them to you regardless. And it's not because it's out to get you. And that happily is something none of us can escape. Those lessons, they don't go away until we've learned them. We're going to learn them one way or another, maybe before we transition and metamorph via mortal death, maybe not. It doesn't stop the bigger show. It also doesn't stop the individuals who are masters of using and manipulating polar forces from using them against others. Keeping people polarized is a wonderful way to keep them from thinking for themselves and to keep them from acting in the ways they may actually want on a much deeper level to act. If everything always gets corrupted into a polarity battleground, if everyone is kept emotionally reactive, if everyone always has an opinion and is in an opinion state, a state of judgment, a state of bias, then no one can actually gain control of themselves or anything else for that matter. You want to make a study of polarity? You can make a study of it in yourself. Watch the news and feel the reactions you have to it in any direction. Feel the feelings, right? All that emotion, right or wrong, all those opinions that well up in you, all that bias for or against your enemies or allies, no room is left to come into your own with all that going on. There is no chance of becoming the poolside CEO, listening to those hummingbirds, smelling the sunscreen, with all the people bringing you information, running the show of your own life, when you are being willfully polarized by other people that understand this massive universal force better than you do yet. So there's an example of polarity. Watch the news, see it in yourself. As for wanting to practice depolarization for yourself, I've said it before, you already know what you need to do. A middle pillar, middle pillar, middle pillar. Or the equivalent of of it in whatever tradition you hail from. There's always an equivalent. It isn't just about visualizing or making you do something or making you meditate. It isn't just about meditation. It isn't just about moving power around your body or creating a pattern of ritual method that you set up in yourself to reflect in the exterior world, which is also a very powerful tool. It's all those things and other things like building the energetic body, working with the spheres, preparing them for other stuff. There's different names for it, but you're also actually calling a specific current of palpable energy into yourself that then collects. It grows with time as you do the middle pillar, those sorts of rituals, those sorts of things again and again. And it can be used. You store it up over time as long as you're doing that practice. And there's other reasons that you can't see yet that I nor any adept can go into because you have to do it for you. But these practices, they do things. Rituals like the middle pillar, they do more than you know. And they will help if you give them the opportunity to. They will serve you well. If you don't, then you don't. And know that no matter what, you are and will serve yourself in the best possible ways, regardless of anything I or anyone says or does. The universe is going to teach you. So you don't need to be this self-critical to where you're worried that you're not catching your reactions. That's more often than not, your conscious mind has evolved a pattern of self-shaming. So you feel that after you do something wrong, that you've caught it and that you haven't fixed it, and now you need to shame yourself for it. None of that is going to serve you very well. It's okay to forgive yourself. It's okay to use the practices and rituals to help you find a state of harmony so that it's a trained skill that's very simple to fall back on, rather than trying to force yourself into the skill set and then judge yourself for it. Until next time.